Hey there, welcome to the Agents of Revival podcast. If you're ready to be healed and take full accountability of your life by evolving into your best self, then this is the podcast for you. I am your host, Andrea Griffin Rogers, and I'll share with you winning steps as well as personal tips and anecdotes on how to go from brokenness to wholeness and from scattered pieces to inner peace. So come on in and join me on this healing journey, and let's become whole together. Enjoy it! Hey, what's up, guys? How are you today? I pray that all is well. This message stirs your faith, falls on good ground, produces good fruit in your lives. Kudos to those that got it right. That means you have been listening. You've been one of my day ones. And so I appreciate you, baby. I really do. Today, we are going to talk about settlers and pioneers. Your training ground won't look like your platform. Oh, yeah, we're going there. Before we get started, let me say a prayer. Because I know I'll get into this thing and then be like, oh, wait a minute. I ain't said the prayer. So I'm going to say a prayer this time and then we're going to jump into it. Spirit of the living God, we come to you right now and we give you glory, honor, and praise. We thank you for being just who you are. We thank you that you love us enough to wake us up this morning and start us on our way. Heavenly Father, help us to be still in this moment, to be still in your presence so that we may hear what the Spirit of the Lord has to say. Thank you, God, that you love us enough to give us instructions, to give us clarity, to give us directions, because you love your children and you've called us for a purpose, for an assignment. And so, Lord, help us to navigate the terrains, whether it's high ground or low ground, high tide or low tide. We thank you in advance that you saw it fit to choose us for such a time as this. And so, come into our hearts. We make you our Lord and Savior, and we thank you for loving us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So let's talk today about what it means or just what it takes to navigate this thing called life. You know, when God gave me this title for settlers and pioneers and how your training ground won't look like your platform, I remember I thought I was going to do a video on this, and I even attempted to do the video, and I had recorded a message, and it was okay. Prayerfully, this one will be much better, but it was okay. But God said, take it down. And I was like, well, why? Why would I do that, God? Like, you gave me this message, and you told me to take it down. And I realized that I hadn't connected all the dots just yet. And you guys have heard me talk about before how I don't teach on anything I haven't learned or aren't currently going through. And so if you you would say, like, I was going through it, but it was like, oh, I need you to wait before you release that thing. And so I thank God that, like, this is this timing to release this and talk about, you know, what it means to be a settler, what it means to be a pioneer, and how we can see the end goal of these great titles, and we see the end goal of what we want to achieve and accomplish and who we want to become. But there is a journey. How many of you know out there, my brothers and my sisters, that there is a journey to get there? It's not easy. If I had a map to show you what it takes to manifest and to see the full manifestation, the full fruition of what God has in store for you, I promise you it won't look like a straight line. You know, culture and movies and things like that make it seem like, oh, it's just a straight line. If you just give these clear directions like the GPS, then, you know, you just turn right, turn left, boom, right there. And it's not that simple, ladies and gentlemen. I wish I could tell you it was, but as I am living this thing out, walking this thing out, continuing to learn as I grow, this journey called life, the assignment that God has in my life, the calling that he has on my life, and the purpose that he has prepared me for and continues to prepare me for, baby, I am learning that it is a lot of twists and turns and ups and downs and pause and push and move and sit and stay and walk and talk. I mean, it is a lot. It is a lot. And it's a lot more than I thought. I heard somebody say it before like this. It was a church leader, and the person said, "Man, if I knew all it was going to take to do what God called me to do, to lead this particular church that they were leading, I'd have never gave God my yes." And I know some of y'all may be like, oh, or feel like, ooh, he say that. You might be one of those religious spirits. Baby, turn me off, okay? Because I ain't here for the religious people. I'm here for the real people, okay? We about being revived and empowered to live our authentic life, okay? You hear me? So I love that pastor said that, because I was like, ding, 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 ding. Yes, sir. Yes. I know what you're talking about. Okay. If I knew all it was going to take to achieve the goal that God set in front of me, I don't know if I would have said yes. I don't know if I could have been that pioneer. I think I would have took a few steps, possibly, because just being me, out of curiosity, just like, let me see. I think I'd have took a few steps, and then I would have settled right there. It's one of those things where you quit while you ahead. Like, all right, I'm ahead enough. I don't think we need to go past here. And little by little, because God is a big God and he has a big vision for each of our lives. And so a lot of times we look at it small scale, and it's like, it's more to it. It's almost like, prime example, if you ask a primary school student, so somebody that doesn't really know much about like college and all this stuff just yet, and you ask somebody, let's say in the first or second grade, like, what do you want to do after this? They're not going to say go to college, because they're not thinking about college. Like, even though somebody may have put that out there for them, or they may have heard about college, so it may be like, oh yeah, I would love to, I guess one day I want to go to college or something like that. That sounds cool. But they have no construct of what it takes to be a college student. Not in first grade. Not when they're 6 or 7 years old, or 5 and 6 years old. They're not thinking about that. No, what are you talking about? No. They're just thinking about, can I pass first grade to get to second grade? Like, they're not even thinking about high school at that point. And so it's similar to, I gave this real life example because it's similar to our lives. Like, God gives us this big dream, this big vision, this big goal, this beautiful image of, or even we may have an idea in our minds of what we want to do, but you have no idea what it's going to take to actually manifest that thing. And I don't care how much research you've done and you have all the data to, prove the path that is needed. One thing that you learn about in history, if you ever taken a history course or watch any sort of like Discovery Channel videos or something like that, you learn that pioneers rarely knew exactly where they were going. Like, they had an idea in mind of where they were trying to get to, but they didn't always navigate the terrain in the straight and narrow path. When I think about Christopher Columbus, for example, there were a lot of twists and turns before he, quote unquote, discovered America. Like, he had got to one place and thought it was America, and I think it was Jamaica. It was like, so he wasn't even, where he thought he was supposed to be. So it just goes to show that you may have an idea to be this pioneer in your family, to do something that has never been done before, never been seen before. But it doesn't matter how much data and research you do, how much science there is, how much knowledge there is out there, you still don't know the wisdom and the tenacity it's going to take out of you. Not anybody else. Because see, when we do the research, we're looking at somebody else who already navigated that path. But you're not them. And this is why you cannot compare yourself to other people. Because they knew how to run their race in the way that they were designed. You're designed differently. And so this is how you see we have all across the world millions of school teachers. But every teacher doesn't teach in the same way. We have millions of athletes, but every athlete isn't training the same way, nor do they play the same sport. Doesn't make them less of an athlete. It just means that the way they do it, the way they're designed, is uniquely fit for them. And so you have to learn how and what it takes for you to move. And then that kind of brings into my point of the additional part of this, which is your training ground won't look like your platform. A lot of times we look at the there and we're like, oh, I can't wait till I get there. And I see myself there. I'm excited for there. But you don't know who you have to become on the way to there. And again, you can do all the research you want in the world, but chances are your pathway is not going to look like your favorite idol or your favorite so-and-so who done it and who inspired you to do it. It's not going to be the same. Not at all. I mean, how many celebrities out there, for example, have you heard their stories of somebody came before them that inspired them, but then when they went that same trajectory to use their talent in that way before they became a star, it was a lot of twists and turns. It may not have been a lot of twists and turns for that particular person who they idolized or who they admired. But it was what they had to go through to develop them. Because God doesn't allow us to go through anything that is useless. It all has a purpose. It is to develop us, to develop the character we need, to develop the integrity we need, to develop the strategy we need, to be in the lessons that we need to learn, to be able to utilize all of those tools on the next level that we want to attain to or achieve. And so that's why your training ground, ladies and gentlemen, won't look like your platform. I think about my own life. Doing this podcast, I've talked about this before, I had no idea that I was going to be doing a podcast. It wasn't in my plans. It wasn't in my thinking or my construct that this is what I was going to do. But I look back over my life and I'm like, wow, I see how God, you connected the dots. And this is why it's very important that you grow to become at peace with your own story. I heard it said like this in a movie. Nobody hates history. They just hate their own history. And whoever you are, you got to move past that place, that point where you stop hating your history and you start loving the experiences and the journey that you went through, because it made you who you are today. You've learned some lessons along the way. It doesn't mean that there weren't some hurts or some pains or some trauma or some twists and some turns or even some things that you may have regretted that you wish you could do all over again if you had the chance. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you have to look at the lessons it taught you and who it's made you to be. I remember growing up, all I did was write poems and short stories, and that was my thing. I had no idea that all of that training, all of my life was leading me up to this. Same thing with being a caregiver. I had always been a caregiver in my family. And then when I went into high school, I went to a trade Catholic high school. So that meant that you had to take up a career as well as study, your normal academic studies. And so my mother made me go into nursing assistant, and so that I can get my certification as a nursing assistant, which I did get. And I had no idea that, like, first of all, why would I go to be a CNA? I didn't really care for taking care of people. Like, I did it so much growing up that it was like, I'm tired of being a nurse in the family. Okay. I'm tired of being a babysitter in the family. I don't want that. But it was just natural for me. I mean, I got great grades, and it was just natural for me. It was something that I learned now, but I didn't know back then. So for my young people out there, this message is for you. You may not know right now what is a talent or a spiritual gift that God gave you, but you will learn as you draw closer to Him and learn more of His character. And that comes from reading the Bible, because I didn't know that back then that being a helper and a caregiver and showing kindness, I didn't know any of that had to do with the Holy Spirit. I didn't learn that until I opened the book of the Bible and then read the book of Galatians, chapter 5. And then I also went to 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and chapter 13 and chapter 14. And it was just like, whoa, okay, this wasn't just me. 'Cause a lot of times when you don't know God's word, then you say things like, oh, this is my personality. This is just who I am. And it's really not. It's so much deeper than that. But you haven't dug deeper to understand just how deep it is. And that's okay. Like, I'm not here to shame you if you're that person and you're like, oh, no, I haven't. Well, this is your opportunity. I just gave you some scriptures. Write them down. Go rewind and write them down so that you can start reading them for yourself. But by me doing that and by me spending time with God to learn more about myself, and then I talked about before about I had to go into counseling and I had to really do some intense therapy and intense unlearning of everything I learned up to that point, and unpacking the trauma and things that I went through in order to heal the wounds that got covered up with more and more dirt as I traveled along the road of life. Trucking mud everywhere all over my heart because I didn't want to stop and heal it. But God, sat me down in a time where I couldn't run anymore. And I had no choice but to stop and heal my heart. Do the work with the Lord in order to do it. And so that's what I did. But it allowed me to connect the dots to see, wait a minute. Back then, this was a talent that you gave me of writing, God. And then you gave me the spiritual gift of being a caregiver, being kind to people, showing that sweetness, being a helper. This was a spiritual gift you put in me before I was ever even born. Because the Bible says in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5, that before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you and I set you apart. This is the Lord speaking to Jeremiah, calling him to be a prophet, but everybody's not going to be a prophet. But there is an assignment that God does have on your life. There is something that he wants to do through you in the earth. And you may be thinking that it's just this little old thing. Or you may not even see the potential that is in you. But if you just keep living a little while longer, the old folks say you will understand it better by and by. You will. I'm telling you the truth because I've lived it. I've experienced it. Again, at the time when I was in my teens and 20s, I did not know my purpose. I'm be honest. And I get this question a lot about like, what is purpose? And I understand that there are new listeners coming to the Agents of Revival podcast. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So you probably have missed all the past seasons that I have taught and talked about vision and purpose and assignments and destiny and all these things. So I'm going to touch a little bit on about that today. But when I was in my teens and my 20s, I had no idea what my purpose was. Which is why I thought my purpose was only one thing. I had no idea that was just a layer of it. So for example, I thought my purpose was only to take care of older people. That's my job, to just be a caregiver to the seniors in my life and the seniors at the nursing home. And that's it. Like, that's my job. I had other dreams. I had other goals. I had other aspirations that were just interests of mine. Fashion is one of them. Just something that I just was interested in. It naturally came to me. And so then after I graduated college, I had an opportunity to go work in New York City in the TV, film, entertainment industry. Working on different projects and fashion as well as different TV shows and films in the costume department and whatnot. And I thought that was my purpose because it's my job. It's what I'm doing. But purpose is something that is so much deeper. It is the thing that's going to carry you even further. Purpose is a lot of times attached to your spiritual gift, the talent that God put in you. Spiritual gift comes from the Holy Spirit. The talent that God put in you, which is something that you naturally do. And here's the biggie that comes with purpose. It is attached to a cause. because God calls us for community. That means he purposed us for community. So when we look at the world today, there may be a lot of issues and problems that you see in the world. And chances are God is calling you to be either a settler or a pioneer in some way, shape, or form. And so for those that's like, well, what's the difference? Let me tell the difference before I get into some biblical stories. So a settler is defined as this, according to the Webster's Dictionary. It is a person who has immigrated to an area and established a permanent residence there. They're generally thought of as people who travel to discover new lands. And a settler is a person who moves to a new place with the intention to stay there. A pioneer is a settler. However, they migrate to an area previously uninhabited or sparsely inhabited that may be described as a pioneer. They are a person or group that originates or helps open up a new line of thought or activity or a new method or technical development and are the first to use or apply this new method, area of knowledge, or activity. And I just said a whole mouthful. But basically, a settler is somebody who has the intention on maybe they moved a little bit, but then they stop and they stay right there. It's like those who are willing to settle in a comfort zone or comfortable place with no more intention to move. So they had a small goal, if you will. Like, it was a big goal at the time, but then once they achieved it, there was no more goals after that. It was like, I'm cool, I'm good with this. A pioneer is a visionary. It is a person who wants to see past the settle line, past them. They want something to outlive them. They want to continue to move forward and see their fullest potential and see what else they have in store for them. You know, I think of this example right now of this commercial I saw. This is a while ago. I think it's a car commercial, and all the people are driving one way or walking one way, but one person decides, why do I have to go that way? I'm going to turn off and go another way. And so the person turns off and they drive it a different way. And it just goes to show that a lot of people in the world are only willing to walk the one way. They never stop to ask, is there a different way to go? Is there a new terrain, an uninhabited place or space or way of doing things that's never been done before? Do I have to do it that way because it's always been done that way? Or is it something else? Is there an innovation that I can create or something new that hasn't been done before? And that's a pioneer, ladies and gentlemen. And I wanted to give you that because a pioneer reminds me so much of a person who has a purpose. It is this burning desire in you that you're not willing to settle. You're willing to continue to move in the direction of what is calling you. And sometimes you don't even know what that call is. But there's this drawing there. I was always drawn, still am, to help people. Just as much as there is a natural thing that is drawn to me that I talked about before on this podcast of people who just randomly meet me in the streets and want to ask me for advice. I don't know you. I don't know you, but yet they just start telling me their issues. Or maybe they don't tell me their issues per se, but it might be like, hey, can I ask you a question about this? And it'll be something random that then goes into something deeper. So and I talked about this before. Like sometimes I'll be, for example, at the market and, I'm about to shop for something in the particular aisle. And so somebody walks up or somebody's already there and they see me just easily grab for what they're looking at. And so they then start asking questions about that. And so then I'll say, oh, yeah, it's a good product. I'm thinking that's the end of the conversation. No. Because then it goes into, because my doctor said this. And so I was thinking, so what is your advice? And I didn't I didn't come here for all that. I came to get my merchandise and leave. But I say that lovingly, as you guys can hear me laughing, because it doesn't bother me, honestly, in that moment. I am thankful. I am honored that you saw something in me out of all the other customers in this store or in this market to ask me a question. You also saw or sensed something in me to then start telling me something personal about your life. And it's so strange the way purpose works, or purpose is birthed and manifested in us, because it always ties into something that is just naturally us. It was natural for me growing up to give my friends advice. Just as it was natural for me growing up to sit in a sense at the feet of my elders. I was always around my elders, always around my great grandmother, always around my grandmother and my grandparents, and my godparents. And these were people that were born in the 1920s and 1930s. So I was taught this what people probably say is outdated world view, or traditional viewpoint, but it's anchored me. It's helped me become who I am today. And it's also helped me to be able to talk to you guys and to be able to give you some of the wisdom that they imparted on me, and that the Holy Spirit has brought back around to my memory to remind me of some of the lessons that I've learned to be able to teach you. I had no idea back then. And I actually, to be quite honest, I don't even think, I was born in 1987. I don't even think back then there was a podcast, or there was a such thing as podcasting. I think there was only radio shows and stuff. So I had no idea when I was born. I had no idea when I was 5 or when I was 15, even when I was 25. I had no idea that by the time I was 35, I would have been starting a podcast. I had no idea. I had no idea all of those years of training, that they were even training. They just seemed like random years. The times where I would sit and listen to these elders in my life share their stories and share their wisdom, it just seemed like endless noise. I'm gonna be honest, because sometimes we'll be in the car and I want to hear my music. I don't want to hear your stories. And I say that lovingly, because just being young and dumb, I'll be honest, you don't realize the wisdom that the elders are trying to impart on you sometimes. And so I would just be sitting there, and especially if one of my elders start telling me a story that I already heard before, I'm like, I've already heard that. I don't want to hear it again. But what I have learned when I stopped fighting it was, you may have heard it, but there's an extra layer of information or wisdom that's being given to you that wasn't revealed to you before. And so when you stop to actually listen, you learn something else. You learn something new. And so all of those years, ladies and gentlemen, I had no idea that it was my training ground for a podcast. I had no idea that all of the years of me writing stories in my journals and writing poems and all these things that I would only let my friends read and only share my stories with my friends, that it would ever be anything that anybody else would want to hear outside of my little friend group. I had no idea. Just as well as I had no idea of all the trauma and the hurt and the pains and the frustrations and the twists and turns and the roadblocks and all these things that I had to navigate in my life. I had no idea that there was a bigger purpose and plan for them. That those very stories that I had to live through and experience will be the very things that will not only hold the key to my freedom, but the key to somebody else's freedom. And so you never know how you are being a pioneer for somebody else. This is why you cannot settle for safe. But this is also not to bash anybody who has settled. Because if it wasn't for those who went before us, we wouldn't be here today. Somebody had to at least take the first step to immigrate to an area, to establish a permanent residence there, to travel or move from one place to another. And they had to establish a foundation as a settler would. So that then when us pioneers were birthed into the earth, we would have something to build upon. This makes me think of Moses and the children of Israel and Caleb and Joshua, excuse me. But it also makes me think of Abraham and Lot. Abraham's parents, when he was just called Abram at the time, they lived in a particular land where his father settled. But it was a land that God did not want to be his promised land that he had for Abraham's heirs. And so he tells Abraham this is in the book of Genesis for those who want to go read it. He tells Abraham to get up and leave your father's house and go to a land I will show you. So this is basically saying, I know your father settled here and he made a home for you guys here. But now I need you to pioneer out of your comfort zone and go to a destination that seems unfamiliar. I'm not telling you all you're going to have to face on that journey, but I just need you to go because I'm promising you something else. I know that this is what your family have been doing up until this point, but I'm a big God. I got bigger, better dreams for you. I want to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you could ask or think in your life. I want to bless your family for generations to come. But it's going to take you to be that pioneer to get up and move. And so this is where the call in our lives comes from. This is where the purpose comes from, because it's different than what our parents or our grandparents were called to do or assigned to do. They were there to settle the ground, to build the foundation for us. But just like any building, once the foundation is built, something else has to be constructed on top of that foundation. And that's where you and I come into play. We have an obligation to go further than our foremothers and our forefathers went. That was the whole point of what they did, what they endured, what they presented for us. I'm talking about some of you out there, wherever you are in your country or part of the world. You may be in your native homeland, or you may be in America where your family migrated to this land. You know, but even if you're in your native country, your native homeland, what are some things that you've heard your parents, your grandparents, maybe your great-grandparents, what did they have to go through in order for you to live the life you live today? And I don't mean just financial things. I know a lot of people think a lot of time about finances and, okay, yeah, for me to have the money I have and the house I have and the car that I drive and the clothes I'm wearing and the labels that I'm wearing. No. I want just let's get to the basic needs. What did they have to go through for you to just have a roof over your head? What did they have to go through for you to have an education? What did they have to go through? And was it even presented for them to be able to have some of the basic necessities that you have? I heard somebody tell a story recently where they said sometimes they were talking to their adult child, and they said sometimes, we would have to, me and your dad would have to think about who would eat tonight to ensure that you ate. And so sometimes you don't even think about, man, what did my mother and my father have to sacrifice for me to be here? I think about that because I was raised, again, in a generation and time where they lived through so much. So they imparted these things in me, and they would teach me to go further. Many of them didn't get a chance to go to college, but they made sure I was able to go to college. Some of them didn't graduate from high school, but they made sure I did. They made sure I had, even when they didn't. I remember a story that one of my grandmothers told me. She said she grew up in a time where, in a home where they didn't always have hot water for everybody to take a bath. And so if one of her siblings it would go by the oldest to the youngest. And so if the eldest took their bath and they got all the hot water and they didn't get out quick enough, but somebody else to get in, because they had to recycle the water, which was like, me being a germaphobe, child, please. I'm like, woo, no, 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 no. Baby, I freaked out just hearing the story. But I had to understand and respect that this was my elder sharing with me her journey. I live now where I can get hot water at any time I want. She didn't always have that luxury. Like, it literally was a time where it was luxury for them to have hot water. And if they didn't, if the eldest ran out of the hot water, then they had to, still go and bathe in that same water. They couldn't afford to eat out. They couldn't afford Uber Eats and all these things that we like so easily have now. It was like, oh, what? Even McDonald's was a luxury to them. And it's like, McDonald's? Child, McDonald's is only such and such amount of money. But for them, it was like, no, that was a luxury. We did not have that to be able to just go to McDonald's. The reason why I wanted to share this with you is because the training ground won't always look like where you're going. And a lot of times we look at people and we see where they are. And it may be your favorite celebrity or your favorite athlete or your favorite whoever. Somebody who has inspired you to become something more than what you saw in your own household or in your own environment. But there was a start before they got to the end. And it didn't look so pretty as it does on a picture. It's like if you could open the widescreen of somebody's life, you would see the beautiful picture of where they are now on their platform. But man, you would see a rugged, muddy, twisty turn, rocks, boulders, trashy terrain behind them that they had to walk through before they got to their destination. And so we got to look at ourselves and see, what is God calling me to do? How badly do I want it? And am I willing to settle for safe? Or do I want to go further than safe? Do I want to go further than what has already been settled and established for me? Because those that came before you already settled. They already settled the score for you to this point. You got to make a decision to go past that. You got to make a decision to go further. That's the pioneer. You got to take that pioneer spirit up in you, that pioneer heart posture to say, I am going to move and navigate somewhere that my family has never even tread upon before. It's okay if you have a big dream. It's okay to go after that big dream. But you got to believe for it. And be willing to go against the winds that's going to come your way. The turbulence is going to come. But the plane never gets to its destination if it doesn't take off of the runway. And the plane doesn't get to the destination if it decides to turn back around and settle for the tarmac because the winds or the turbulence was too much. Eventually, you will see every pilot figure out the winds and figure out when it's time to take off, because they got a whole plane of people that's behind them. That's why the cockpit is at the front, but behind the cockpit is a whole plane full of people that is waiting for this pilot to get them to their destination. I'm saying this because you need to be the pioneer, because there are a whole plane of people, not just your family, not just your friends, not just people that you know. It may not even be your children. There are people that is attached to your assignment. And if you never take off, they never get to their destination. You got to be the first. You got to be the one to be the pioneer. If Abraham would have stayed and settled where his dad had settled them at, Israel would not be where it is today. Israel would not have what it has today. I don't just mean the land and the riches of the land. I mean in terms of the 12 tribes of Israel. Because the 12 tribes of Israel make up the 12 sons and their children, all the way down to now, of Jacob, whose name got changed to Israel. Jacob's grandfather is Abraham. See how that all lined up? Abraham had no idea what was to come. Now, granted, God eventually told him. But when God first said move, he did not show him a vision of what was to come, of what we see Israel today. He just said your descendants will be vast. You can't even count the amount of stars of how many descendants you're going to have. But it took Abraham to doing the first thing, making the first move, moving towards the first step. And there's a lot that he went through. It wasn't easy. But if you look at Abraham's story, you see how it all helped him to become a better pioneer. It all helped him to become a better leader. And it all helped him to be able to deal with conflict. So that when we get to the part of the story in Genesis where he is now confronted with the conflict of not only just different corrupt people that he encountered doing business with, but then also even when it came to his own nephew, Lot, who left with him on the journey. He had a decision to make. How do I deal with this conflict that is now affecting my nephew? But along the way, he encountered different pharaohs and different leaders where he had to learn how to speak, how to stand, how to have a voice, despite everything else. We see that in David's story. For somebody who maybe you've never heard of these people before, I'm sure you heard of King David. And we see that in David's story, where David, is a shepherd boy. How do you become a king and a great general in an army from being a shepherd's boy? But he tells us in 1 Samuel 17 that, well, when I was tending to the sheep, there would be much bigger beasts, bears and lions, that would try to come and take my father's sheep. And so I would have to fight off those animals who are bigger and much stronger than me. And I would defeat them. I would club them to death. So he learned how to fight, not on the battlefield. He learned how to fight not in the boxing ring. He learned how to fight not at the palace on the throne. He learned how to fight in the shepherd's field. A place where it seemed like you shouldn't even have any battles here, because it's just all grasslands. But he learned how to fight a different way. I wanted to give you these stories because I want you to see how your life may not look like where you're going. It may not have looked like in the past of what God is calling you to do. It don't make sense, but it better make faith. You have to trust that God has a plan for your life and for it all. It's all a part of the training ground. And as you continue to navigate that training ground, as you continue to learn, as you work out in that training ground, so to speak, you grow more muscle tension, you grow more strategy, you grow wiser. You gain more tools and resources so that when the platform comes, or when the end destination comes, or when that goal is reached, when you get to that next level that you're dreaming for, or hoping for, or praying for, you'll have the lessons from before and the perseverance that was needed to get to that destination. Because every level that you face are going to come with new trials. And in those new trials, you're going to need to take some of the lessons that you learned back then and apply them to now. It all adds up. The thing is, most people, you don't stop to connect the dots of your past. And part of it could be because it's too painful. And so the first step you would need to do is go and deal with the pain. Get into counseling. Find a spiritual mentor. If you're not ready to go face an actual counselor yet, find a spiritual mentor. Work with that spiritual mentor first. And then you'll find it becoming a little bit more easier or comfortable for you to then go and find you a therapist that's going to be able to help you. Because you got to deal with the past in order to see the success of the future. Because it's all connected. Because if you don't deal with your past presently, you will take that past into your future and contaminate it. And nobody wants to see you bring the old garbage from one house to the next. No. That's why each place has dumpsters. You dump that garbage off where that one house was at so that you move to the next house with no garbage at all. Because as you go through life, you'll accumulate more garbage. But you'll have the lessons you learned before on how to get rid of that garbage, meaning heal, to then apply it as you journey on. Because again, new levels, new devils. You're going to deal with trials and tribulations. They're going to come. Like, embrace it. If nobody's ever told you that, let me tell you that right now. Embrace it, baby. Because they're going to come. But you are a pioneer, my friend. God has called you for such a time as this to do something in the earth that is divinely great for your life. This does not mean that everybody's going to have a platform in terms of being a celebrity and all that stuff. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about you have a position of power and authority, or that God rather wants to place in you that power and authority to influence and impact the community that you're in. But it takes you adopting this pioneer mindset to not settle for safe and to move forward, even if nobody else in your family, none of your friends have ever walked this way before. You got to trust that if God is calling you to, he's going to bring you through it. It may not make sense. You may not know the whole full scale of where you're going. Abraham did not know where he was going. Remember, God said, go to the land I will show you. That's not giving me a map of everything I'm going to encounter and how long it's going to take, how many down to the minutes and the milliseconds. And no, he just said, go to the land I will show you. Get up and move. But even when we think about that, break it down. Like, don't look at the mountain as so big. Don't look at your life right now. Even if you're young and feel like I gotta have it all figured out right now. No, but as you journey along, you will learn and all the pieces will begin to fit where they need to fit. But it is taking the first step first. And so the first step is that Abraham had to take was to go tell his wife. First of all. Simple. Like, honestly, when God calls us to do something, it seems bigger than us. Because it is. He's a big guy. And it's attached to people. It is not just about you. But he will equip you as you journey on, as you pioneer and move forward. That's part of the training ground. That's why it's important to see the lessons that you learn along the way, because they are part of your training. Every conflict I faced, every challenge I faced, every trauma I faced, every difficulty I faced, every setback I faced, all of that helps me to minister the gospel and teach other people. All of that helps me to do the job I do now. All of it is tied in. I'm able to mentor and minister to people because I had the training ground all my life of dealing with people. And some of those people were difficult people. Some of those people were stubborn people. Some of those people were nice people. Some of those people were mean people. But all of it was part of the training ground that I was going to need to do my assignment. Everybody's assignment is different. Before I went, so just to make it a little bit, I would say normal for those out there that's like, well, I don't feel called to get into ministry. I want to work with children, or I want to be a nurse or something. Okay. As I said earlier, with me going into high school, I went into the program for nursing assistant. I eventually graduated with my diploma as well as with my certification in nursing assistant. So I was licensed to be a CNA. Before that happened, my childhood was spent not only being the nurse on call, if you will, when my grandparents, my great-grandmother would get sick and they would need somebody to take care of them. But also my godparents were the head deacon and deaconesses of the board at the church. And so it was their job to go around and administer Holy Communion to the sick and shut-in. So this means that we were visiting people's homes, visiting hospitals and hospice care, and we would sing songs to them and read scriptures with them. Again, look at how that even ties into what I'm doing today with you guys. But, we would sing songs to them and read scriptures to them. I would give encouraging words to them. This is when I'm young, y'all. I'm talking like 6, 7, even 5 years old. Like, this is what I was doing. So all of that was helping me and preparing me for when the time came for me to start working in nursing homes, because I already knew what it was like to operate in these particular rooms with people who were really sick, or some people who were actually dying. I already knew what that was like because I had years of growing up taking care of older people in different capacities. Then after high school and working a little bit as a CNA, at the same time going to college, I went to college for psychology. Again, dealing with people, helping people, caring for people, taking care of people. All the same thing, just done in different ways. And then graduated college, and then I went into working in entertainment, TV, and film, and fashion in New York City. Taking care of clients, taking care of celebrities, taking care of people in a different way. Now I'm just taking care of how they look on film and in magazines and stuff. Then from there, God called me into ministry. Again, taking care of people in a different way. But now, by me doing ministry, also, let's bring back what I've already been doing since I was a little girl, of writing and storytelling. So you see how everything is connected? But now the bigger scale is, you've also had some life lessons. You've learned some things in the training grounds that can then help people navigate their own training grounds. And so that's what I do. I'm now helping you and other people who need to do the work in their lives, who need someone to hold them accountable and help them be disciplined and intentional about their healing. Because I went through the training ground. I went through the process. I was the pioneer. I was, as I say, the first agent of revival. But you all are joining me on this journey. You all are agents of revival. You all are agents of change. You are pioneers. Spreading the good news everywhere you go, because you've had training after training after training. And each time, even if it was good, bad, or indifferent, God has kept you nonetheless. And so, before we go, I didn't even know this message was going to go this way. I love how God works, because I had notes. I tell y'all every time I had some notes, And I am not able to get to my notes, but I do want to get to my Dear Andreas, because I have 2 Dear Andreas that was sent to me. And so I do want to honor the listeners, though they did not leave their names. And so one is, they're basically simple questions. So one is, Dear Andrea, how do we find our purpose? Well, my friend, I hope that this message today helped you out in some way, but to make it clear of how do you find your purpose. First thing first is to look at your interests. What are you just naturally interested in? What are you talented in? What is something that you can do in your sleep? You would do it if you weren't being paid. What is something that ties to your heart, or what I would say is a spiritual gift that it's just innately in you? Like, you hear people say all the time, oh, you're so kind, or you're so helpful, you're such a great leader, or you're so knowledgeable, or you're such a generous giver, you're such a good helper. Like, what are some of these things that just naturally tie into who you are and who people say you are? And then, what are you talented in? Are you a good dancer, a good singer, a good songwriter, a good director, film producer? Are you a good nurse, a good doctor, a good lawyer, a good custodian, or a good homemaker, a good baker, a good teacher? Like, what do you naturally do? Are you great at giving advice? Are you great or good at scheduling or organizing things? Are you good at planning parties and events? Are you good at finding out information to help people navigate the court systems? I mean, like, what is it that just people always come to you for that thing? You do it so easily, you do it so naturally. And then add those things up with this last part of the formula. What is a problem that you see in your environment? That could be your community or your family or your city, state, or even your country, that really stirs on your heart. It breaks your heart. It upsets your heart. You constantly keep feeling like you know the answers, or what they should do, or how things should be changed, or you know, even people say to you like, well, won't you do it? That is part of your purpose. So it is your gift, your talent, and what you're drawn to, the problems you're drawn to in your community or area. For me, so I told you a lot about the gifts and the talents I already had. One of the things that has always meant and was dear to my heart, which is, for me going into psychology, was I wanted to know why people were the way they were. What happened to them that caused them to be who they were today? And how can things be changed to make them better? Like, that was naturally what it was always about for me in terms of helping people, even when I was younger. Like, how did you get sick? Okay, well, how can I make you better? What advice can I give you that will help you so that you don't make that mistake again? So it all tied in. I would see the bigger, this problem. And then, interesting how God moved me into the church realm, because, I was brought up and raised in church all my life. But I also saw a lot of problems in the church, and I faced a lot of issues in the church that I talked about before, on my, YouTube channel. I did a video, that, I called, I think it was A Diet for Your Destiny. So if you see that video, that's where I kind of talked about some of the things that I would see that were problems in the church, and it would really break my heart. And then when I encountered them myself and couldn't find any help, it made me even more want to help people. I didn't know that this was what God was going to have me do. I just thought I was going to be like in behind the scenes helping people. But hey, God, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. And so that's how that came about. And then thanks be unto God, because he gives us clarity. He then gave me the confirmed calling, if you will. So like, he spoke to me in a dream, in a vision, where he said, this is what I'm calling you to do. Teach the gospels through your story. That means teach the good news of Jesus Christ through your story. Teach what Jesus has done in your life, what God has done in your life, lessons you've learned, the wisdom you've been taught. Teach it through your experiences. And so here I am today. So I hope that answers your question. The second and last question is, Dear Andrea, how will I see what he had? What? Dear Andrea, how will I see what he stores? I think she meant what he or she meant what he has in store for me without it being blatantly in my face. Okay. I feel like I hear my nana, my great grandmother saying to me, I could just hear her voice rather. And she used to say something that a lot of the older seasoned saints have said, and some of you out there may be seasoned saints, so you probably heard me say this time and time again. You probably said this yourself. You'll understand it better by and by. you know, it's not gonna always seem like it's right in your face. And I had a conversation with somebody who was about 19 recently about this, because for them they couldn't quite figure out what their purpose was or what they were designed to do. And so I was telling them, I'm like, okay, hey, just look how God works. But I was telling them, I said, well, what do you naturally like to do? And they really couldn't answer the question. Then I said, well, what are you talented in? And they really couldn't answer that question either. But here's the kicker. I listened. So I then just let them talk. And in letting them talk, came about, well, how did you get into the job that you're working right now? And they lit up. Oh, I love children. And I like, I was just found it interesting to, help out kids and be with kids and teach kids. And okay, so right there, that spark of light that you have, the reason why you probably can't figure it out is because you're already moving and maneuvering in your calling. You're meant to do something with kids. So right now you may be a teacher's assistant, but you love what you do. So that trajectory may take you to become a full teacher, and then may even become a principal. And who knows, maybe own your own school one day. But at least you are on the right path because you love working with children. And so it may not seem like it's in your face. That's why I talk a lot about connecting the dots. Because when you take time and you got to take time outside of social media, outside of watching TV, sometimes outside of you listening to music, because depending on what music you're listening to, it's going to infect and infiltrate your mood and your mind, and you're not able to focus. So you got to get into a room quietly by yourself, pen and paper or iPad or notepad or phone or tablet or whatever, but make sure that it's not disturbing you with notifications, and really map out the things that interest you, the things that that you're talented in or you're gifted in, things that people have easily pointed out to you that maybe you didn't even see in yourself, but you was like, I just do it because it's nothing to me. Like it's like secondhand. Yeah, but there's something there. You're dismissing it as nothing, but it's the reason why people are pointing it out, because it is something that they don't have, that they see that you have, or they don't see it in other people. So it's rare in you. So it's there for a reason. So it may not be in your face, but maybe people are pointing it out to you. And then in terms of to see what God has in store for you, you got to just keep walking. Like you literally got to keep. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. I did not know the Agents of Revival podcast would be here today. I did not know that I would have a ministry called Agents of Revival. I had no idea of that 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was mourning the loss of my grandmother and just trying to stay alive. I was talking about that before, where I went through, a suicide attempt. Like I was so heartbroken and so grief stricken that my mind was not thinking 10 years later. I couldn't even fathom the next day. So, but as I walked it out and as I did the work and as I stayed steadfast in prayer and even reading my Bible, eventually it became clear. In 2017, April 25th, 2017, I remember it like it was yesterday. That's when God called me and gave me my assignment to teach the gospel through my story. That wasn't there in 2014 when I was, 10 years ago when I was going through the pain and the beginning of the Job Wilderness season. And so even, 20 years ago, none of this was on my mind to do. So I think the biggest thing that what I can say to you, whoever you are, is you got to just keep living. You got to just keep moving. Take inventory of what's going on around you. Take inventory of what you've been through. Jot it down if you think you'll forget. But, you'll eventually connect the dots and see where God is leading you. But God doesn't illuminate the entire path for you. As I said earlier with Abraham's story, he just tells you to move. And you got to be willing to just take that first step. And as you take that first step, then the next step will open up. The next light will illuminate, if you will, of the next part of the path. And then you move there. But it's a relationship that God wants to have with you. So he builds trust. So he says, take my hand and I'll guide you. And as you take the first step and you see that, oh, that wasn't too bad. Then he says, good. And then we're going to take another step. So he doesn't give you the full path because he doesn't want you to go through life without him, go through the door of opportunity without him. He doesn't want you to achieve that platform that he has for you, wherever that is in your community or in the world. He doesn't want you to achieve it without him. So he takes you little by little by little. But as he takes you little by little by little, your trust is growing in him. Your endurance is developing. Your perseverance is strengthening. And then your strength is progressing as you go along. So I hope that helps you out. If anybody else has some Dear Andreas that you want to send me and you want your question and answered on the air, please feel free to email me at AndreaGriffinRogers@gmail.com. That's all one word, AndreaGriffinRogers@gmail.com. You can also find the information in the description of whatever podcast platform you're listening on, and send me your email. And who knows, your email may be the next one that I read on here. And you can also send me your comments as well. So it doesn't just have to be a question. If you're like, hey, I just want to tell you how much this message inspired me, or what you were going through when you listened to this message, and I pray that it encouraged you, please share that with me. I would love to hear it and share it with my brothers and my sisters on the podcast. So I hope to hear from you soon. May the Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face shine upon you. May the Lord God be gracious to you, show you his favor, and give you shalom, give you his peace. Take care. Love you guys. Bye now.